Welcome to Matbakh. My name is Mikey Mhenna. Today on the series, we have Sahar Parham Al Awadhi, who is an Emirati chef based in Dubai, and it is my honor to have her on the series. Welcome, Sahar.
Hi, Mikey. Thanks for having me.
For sure. Okay, I want to start with a simple question,
Okay.
which is on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you describe Dubai as a quote-unquote food city?
Oh my God. I think in the last couple of years, on a scale of 1 to 10, I think we are a solid 8, if not more. In the last couple of years, it's grown so much, and like crazily enough, since COVID, I feel like all these like amazing chefs that were like the underdog chefs, they just came out and they're like, we're going to start our own restaurant, we're going to do our own thing. And we have this like mix of everybody just cooking their style and their own food. And then we started getting all of these like amazing, awards coming in that like really helped boost the culinary scene. And I feel like right now, just like, the way that you would think of like Paris that has its own culinary DNA, or London or New York, I feel like Dubai is kind of like forming its own culinary DNA right now.
Okay, I'm going to ask, so like, I will compare two different, I'll stick with the US for a second. I'll compare two different cities in New
Okay.
York, in the
Okay.
States, both of which have amazing restaurants, and amazing chefs and get awards.
Yeah.
But one, I don't think, one is a city that has a structural problem with it and a structural opportunity, and the other is a city that is a sort of more traditional food city. So New York, I think people would describe as a really great food city. Like if somebody's into food, maybe a 10 out of 10, right? From bagels and pizzas to really high-end white tablecloth culinary
Right.
experiences, farm to table and all that stuff,
Right.
right? Las Vegas has amazing restaurants, right? Las Vegas has world renowned chefs, incredible restaurants. If you want to have Japanese food, somebody might say some of the best Japanese food in the world is in Las Vegas. If you want to have Peruvian food, if you want to have Indian food, if you want to have Mexican food, if you want to have Chinese food, Las Vegas, you can get all that stuff made by incredibly skilled chefs. But the problem is that it's really hard to get ingredients.
Right.
And so because of that, there is a structural problem. But there's an opportunity because they have insane number of tourists from all over the
Right.
world who want to try lots of different things and want to spend money on food experiences.
Right.
And so that creates the opportunity. Dubai, I think, is in the latter group, right?
I would.
Or maybe not. Correct me if I'm wrong. I want to understand, because you're on the inside. You understand this much better than I do. So I want to understand the inside.
Right. I know people love to compare Dubai to Las Vegas, and like they think that, it's all the luxury and the glitz and glam. But just like Las Vegas, what we know of Las Vegas is just a strip. And so what people think that Dubai is like Las Vegas is just that one little bit of Dubai. But if you really get into it, if you really go down to like Deira and Karama, you have like little vendors making Sudani afternoon tea in the middle of the souk. You have like the Indian, South Indian food being made in Karama. You have like all the way in Satwa, you have, these great little Filipino restaurants. So I think there's a really broad spectrum in that it kind of, yes, you do have the Michelin-starred restaurants and you do have the fine dining restaurants, but there are all of those little hole in the walls and those little street food vendors that we grew up with. Like they're not something that just started right now, like all of the fine dining restaurants. We actually grew up with all of those little restaurants. And I think the difference between Dubai and Vegas would be, one, there's a huge agricultural push in the UAE from the Ministry of Climate Change and Environment. And so you're seeing a lot more farms coming up, especially in Al Ain, because the soil is very fertile. And then secondly, the other advantage that we have is that we're geographically in such a great location that we get the most amazing ingredients from the entire world. So like the best tuna from Japan and the best cheese and dairy from France and kind of all around everywhere. We have access to, I would say, literally every single ingredient that you can think of.
Yeah. Okay, so there's two ways of thinking about distance, right? There's time, and then there's space. And so when you think about like farm to table, that experience,
Right.
you're trying to measure the distance from the farm and the table. You can measure that in time and space. So let's talk about the time.
Okay.
If you want to have tomatoes and peppers that are from some part of Mexico,
Right.
and you want to feature that in a dish,
Yeah.
right? What is, I mean, it's obviously the space is huge, right? But because Dubai is probably one of the busiest ports in the entire world,
Mm-hmm.
and is so strategically located, what is the time it takes to bring produce from Mexico or from any of these places that you're talking about? Because maybe it, like, help us understand how quickly does it actually go from said farm to said table?
So things coming from Mexico or Australia or any of those other countries that are like
Yeah,
specialty ingredients will normally, from my experience, will come in twice a week. So in terms of like being a restaurant or a hotel, you have 2 days during the week where you place your orders and you know that the next day the shipment's coming in and that's the day that you're going to get those ingredients. So it's not a
yeah,
situation where we're like importing every single day and like our carbon footprint is going like through the roof, with like containers and shipments coming every day. It's twice a week. It is still a large footprint. It's not the most ideal way to source ingredients. Personally, for me, as much as I can, I try to source locally. And if I can't source locally, I think of it as an onion. So, like, what's the next layer? So, my options are Oman, that has amazing produce, Saudi, Bahrain, Kuwait, and then kind of going through that onion and figuring out what's the closest place to me that also has the same season almost as the UAE does, so that it doesn't affect my
yeah.
seasonality and it doesn't affect what I'm supposed to be eating in that season. Um, and obviously, like the time and space continuum.
Yeah, I love it. It's so interesting to me. Um, okay, I definitely want to talk about farming, and some of the work that's being done in the UAE, just because I think it's a huge blind spot for people. I don't think people have any
Yeah.
idea. So it's definitely something I want to come to. But before we get to that, let's just fill in some of like the biographical
Okay.
details. How, if I look you up on LinkedIn, right? It says qualified mass communications graduate. Those are the first.
this
Those are the first three things that
this
I see on LinkedIn.
I think I've completely like neglected LinkedIn for the last
No, no, no.
10
I like it.
years.
Please don't change it. Please don't change it. It's so good. I love it. So, how did a qualified mass communications graduate end up to be the pastry chef at Burj Al Arab and somebody who's winning awards for that work? Walk me through that transition.
I can walk you through the transition. I don't know how it happened. Um, the transition was, I mean, going to culinary school wasn't really an option at that time. And I'm talking, I don't know, when was it? 2004. Wasn't really
Hmm.
an option at that time for me. And so, um, obviously, I had to apply to a great university. I had to get a great degree, and that was what I wanted to do. That was the direction that I went in. After that, I did work at a different university. It was a federal government university, so it was not for profit. I loved that job. I was doing a lot of marketing and social media and branding and communications. Um,
Yeah, we all got to start
we
somewhere.
all got to start somewhere. Funnily enough, my boss, and I say this all the time, like your boss, who you choose to work for is really important because it really could change your life. it's not the place that you work at, it's the person that you work directly under. And so we were talking about food, and she turns to me and she's like, Sahar, I know you really love your job, but like when you talk about food, your eyes light up. You have to do something about it. And so that's kind of how it started. I started this whole like tipping my toes into like restaurants and like 2 days here and 2 days there and freaking out every time, because every time I would go in, the chef would be like, why are you even doing this? You know, you're not going to have a life when you start working in the kitchen. You're going to hate yourself. You're never going to see your family. You're never going to see your friends. You're like, it's just horrible. And so every time I would go in, I'd get scared. And they weren't wrong. It did eventually happen. But at some point,
Predictions became true.
it did. But eventually I was just like, I just need to do this, because otherwise I'm just going to keep wondering, like, what if I had done it? What would have happened? Would I have enjoyed it? And like, worse comes to worse, if I do it and I don't enjoy it, I can always go back to marketing or communications. Lucky for me,
Yeah.
it's been like 10 years and I haven't looked back yet.
So, why pastry? And I want to come to pastries more. I want to focus on pastries in a bit,
Yeah.
but tell us why pastry.
Uh,
Because it's a specific thing. It's its own
it
thing.
is. And I love the technicality of it. I love the structure of it. I love the chemistry of it. I personally have a major sweet tooth. So the way that it started was that like I remember going to my aunt's house, and she'd make these like very simple desserts, like mal el bayt, like the house desserts. Like she'd take some pound cake and put some like chocolate cream on it, and it was just fascinating to me what you can do. I have a sweet tooth, and then I started seeing desserts online and on the Food Network, and I'd want to try them, and we didn't have that kind of place in Dubai that offered those kinds of pastries, so I started trying to make it myself. So it was really out of necessity, wanting to eat a pastry and like having to make it myself. And then again, like I just fell in love with like the chemistry and the structure, like the just what it takes to like make a pastry.
Yeah. So, I, I want to talk about pastries and sort of like pastries in the Emirates.
Okay.
Okay. And the flavor profile that you're used to.
Yeah.
So, again, my limited understanding is having a pastry and being like, oh, there's so much Iranian or Persian influence in this.
Right.
Tell me to what degree I'm wrong about that.
I think there definitely is Persian influence. There's definitely a lot of Indian influence, and there's definitely a lot of, I would say, Oman, Yemen, and Saudi influence. Mostly because borders weren't as definitive as they are right now, and so things flowed they weren't at all, right? And so in the same way that like you would have, if you're in France, but you're in the south of France and they're on the border of Spain, then their cuisines kind of go similar to each other and they'll use similar ingredients. And the same thing probably happened here. So where the UAE is, historically was a poorer area. It wasn't as populated or as agriculturally rich. And so the influences were from the neighboring countries. And what are the neighboring countries? So they're Iran and Oman and Saudi. And you see a lot of that in the UAE's cuisine. And then obviously, I know everybody knows this, but the Silk Route brought in a lot of spices that we use in that whole region.
Yeah. If you were to sort of diagnose the different influences, right? Sort of parse them
Yeah.
out. Can you pick an example pastry, right? That how could you parse out the different influences?
I think I think spice is probably the best way.
So pick a pastry.
Pick a
Pick a
pastry.
dish that you think helps illustrate this idea.
What would I pick? For example, asida. something that we eat here. It's kind of like a pudding. It has like flour and sugar and oil in it. And sometimes in the winter we do pumpkin. Other times we do carrots based on seasonality. That for me screams Saudi and Oman. Rangina for me, in the way that like Rangina screams Persia. Faluda that we have, or what was the other one? Ferni, for example, screams India. So like it's.
What are those things? I'm not familiar with any of these things. I love
Ferni is basically our rice pudding. Everybody has a rice pudding, right? So
yeah.
like it's a rice pudding, but the way that we make it is with ground rice, so it's not with whole rice. And the reason why I say that is they do have firni in India, and they do it with a coarser rice, not as finely ground as the UAE. It's just that I think our spices are different. They do it a little bit thicker. We do it a little bit runnier. So like it's very, very similar. Rangina is more of a end of summer kind of dessert because you use fresh, ripe rotab dates. And then you cover that with like this roasted flour, sugar, oil, cardamom, roux kind of mixture on top. Yeah, aslida is just roasted pumpkins, rose water, cardamom, saffron, like all cooked together with like roasted flour and ghee. So something that has ghee in it, I'll normally associate it with Saudi or Oman because animal fat was very prominent in all of the cooking in the area.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting because like if you were saying earlier, you know, like borders didn't exist. These places are all fluid. You can't draw borders and waters, right? So like it's hard to just even decide where one thing starts and one thing ends. And that was true, obviously, for centuries and centuries. Right. And because of that, like the idea of a national cuisine would have been ludicrous like 100 years ago, right?
I think it's ludicrous right now. Go ahead.
But there are people who are trying to push that, right? Like we have a national cuisine, right? When you're, you know, like when I'm in Doha, it's like this is Qatari food, and when you're Oman, this is Omani food, and when you're in Bahrain, this is Bahraini food, and when you're in Saudi, this is Saudi food, in Emirates, this is Emirati food, Kuwait, this is Kuwaiti food. But it's like you look at the map and you're like, guys, we're all right next to each other.
Right.
We're all right next to
like,
each other.
We have
we're all using the same ingredients.
Like are the same dish basically, but we say them in different ways. Like Kuwait and like Saudi have a dish called kabsa, and we just call it majboos. So it's basically the same thing, just like grammatically different. I want to correct myself. So I do think there are national cuisines. I don't think that they should be so strict. Like who decided that we need to stop adding dishes to the national cuisine? Or who decided that they stop evolving? And who decided that like, khalas, just because somebody like 1,000 years ago said, this is what the national, these are 100 dishes that like make up your national cuisine, that today with the resources and the techniques that we have, we can't add dishes to the national cuisine.
I'll take one further. Forget the resources and the techniques. Resources and techniques, I totally agree with you. But the thing that I think is the biggest influence on cuisines is like the lived experience of that nation, right? And so much of the lived experience is created by the people living that experience. Right. So obviously the cuisine in a place like Dubai is going to be influenced by, as you said, huge communities from the Philippines, huge communities from South Asia, communities from East Africa, South African people who are in Dubai and all that stuff, right? This like alchemy of taste profiles, right? So I want you to try to predict what you think, quote unquote, Emirati food is going to look like as a national cuisine in like 50 years. We just celebrated UAE 50. Yeah. What is it? What is the pavilion of Emirati cuisine going to taste like at UAE 100?
Um, you know, traditionally, we don't. What I see a lot coming up is because of this agricultural boom that's happening here, we're getting a lot more locally grown vegetables. And traditionally, we don't have a lot of salads in the Emirati cuisine. What we do is we eat our food with green herbs, so like bitters that are digestives, and that's like radish leaves and mint leaves and et cetera, et cetera. So what I see is the growth of the addition of a lot of vegetables into the food as well. So like a lot of salads being introduced to the menu, a lot of perhaps refinement into the current dishes that are very protein and grain based. The introduction of vegetables is going to kind of change the profile in the way we eat. Also considering people are trying to eat more healthy, kind of. I mean, obesity is a huge issue. I think maybe one of the
Yeah.
biggest issues in the UAE, and that's something that we need to consider when we're evolving our cuisine. I don't like the word modernizing. I like the word evolution of cuisine in the way that like
Hmm.
countries and cities evolve, the way that Dubai or the UAE's evolved in the last 20 years or in the 15 years, cuisines will evolve as well. Cuisines should evolve as well.
So where do you think it's evolving? Or what is your dream? What is your dream
Oh
for?
my
I love
gosh.
it. You killed the you totally nailed the press secretary answer. You're like, I don't think modernizing is the right answer. I would like to evolve, and I'm like, okay, Sahar.
Um,
What do you think it's going to look
what
like?
is it? I mean, I really do think like vegetables are gonna be very big on Emirati. I think you know, I would like to see personally, and this is what I sort of try to do, is to add a lot of technique to already existing dishes. So that's why I say evolve. So in the way that I would say Paul Bocuse, and I'm not comparing myself to Paul Bocuse at all, but in the way that like he took French cuisine and he's like, this is the refinement and this is what we're gonna do and this is how we're gonna cook it and like revolutionize it. I would love for myself and other chefs to do the same thing in the way that Le Nôtre completely revolutionized French pastry to what we know it today. What you think of right now as French pastry with like that mousse and that glaze and that layering and that sponge and everything, that's not traditional French pastry. That's the revolutionized Le Nôtre French pastry. And I would love to see technique going into a lot more of our dishes.
Okay, okay,
That
good
wasn't
job.
the answer that you were looking for, was it?
No, but I'm having fun. Um, I want okay, so I want as somebody who used to work in an iconic building in
Hmm.
Dubai, right? I'm sure many a tourist has asked you for recommendations of places to go eat.
Yes.
So I'm going to add on to that list. So I'm in Dubai solo traveling. I'm there for you know 36
Right.
hours, and and I'm making food a priority.
Okay. Okay.
Gastrotourism.
So, uh,
Where do I eat?
first, you should go to Gababa. So, it's an Emirati seafood restaurant. You'll eat with your hands. You'll get a lot of fresh seafood that's local. You'll get a lot of flavors that are local, all that stuff. So, I highly recommend
Like it's like saffron. What else is? What are the?
Saf.
What does? How do you do seafood? Emirati seafood.
So, it's not very finicky or fussy. So, most of the time, it's grilled. If it's not grilled, it might be some sort of fried. But the seafood is really fresh. So from different fish that you would get chanad or tuna or all of that stuff here. You'll get prawns. You'll get specific things that you might not get anywhere else. So we have a dish called jashid that's made with shark. That's very ethically sourced. Don't worry. So it's a shark dish that's kind of like flaked fish with like spices and caramelized onions. You'll get hubul, which is fish eggs that we eat as well. Prawns that are locally sourced, crab that's locally sourced, and then just on a bed of like rice. So that's probably, I would really recommend that. Eating with your hands, obviously, there is really important. They have on the table the condiments that we have is achar, so a pickle of any sort that has like Emirati ingredients, turmeric, chili, coriander, any of those things. The other condiment is spiced ghee, so clarified butter that has cumin in it or turmeric in it or chili in it or whatever. So that's also a condiment. And then it'll come with a side of, like I said, the bitter herbs that are digestive. So like radish leaves, radish, mint, all of that stuff. So definitely recommend that. My second recommendation, and I think everybody would agree, is Urfeli Brothers. I think what he's doing for his food, for Syrian food or for Levant food, is incredible. It's amazing and consistently delicious. And I don't know how he does it, but he does it, and it's amazing. If you're looking for Indian food, you can go both ways. So there's in Karamat, there's a couple of places that I would recommend where you can have South Indian food. You can have tawa palau, onion rava, thali, whatever you want. There are a couple of places there. And then if you want to go on the completely different spectrum, there's a 2 Michelin-star Indian restaurant called Tresson that is exquisite. It's amazing. So both equally amazing. I think those are top 3.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Keep going.
Keep going.
Those are top 3.
Those are
what
top
about,
3.
So like, for example, like if somebody comes to Beirut,
Yeah.
there's like very sha'abi food that I would recommend, right? Like these are dishes that you have to have. It would be ridiculous for you to come to Beirut without having really good Armenian food, and like a lot of like just like quote unquote quote street food, right? So same thing like with Singapore. You go to Singapore and it's like, okay, you gotta enjoy the street food. You go to New York, you gotta enjoy the street food. You go to certain places. So what is the equivalent of street food in Dubai? That's like you can't not.
You have to have ragag with mashawa. It's basically like a sourdough batter, super thin, super crispy, with egg and mashawa. Mashawa is it's a garam, so it's almost like a lacto fermented dried anchovies that is fermented in a clay pot. 2 weeks later, pureed, you add spices, you ferment it again for another 2 weeks, and it's like this really pungent, delicious umami fish flavor. So ragag with mashawa for sure. Egg, if you like egg in there. Other street foods are legemat, for sure. You gotta get legemat. So they're fried donuts with date syrup, like just massive like amounts of date syrup and sesame seed. What else? We do nekhe and bajilla, so like they're basically just cooked chickpeas or cooked fava beans, and those are just like snacks with chili and lemon juice. What else do we have? I think those are top, I would say.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm curious, what was the day-to-day like working at Burj Al Arab?
Intense every single day.
Yeah, tell me about it. What was it like? It seems like it would be Very high stakes.
Very. So obviously the expectations are super high. So, and it's almost impossible to meet expectations just because of the caliber that the hotel is. And then the day to day was tough because we were a central kitchen. So we had 9 restaurants in the hotel, anywhere ranging between fine dining and buffet. We handled the lobby, we handled all the banquets and the in-room dining. So like our central kitchen, and we were a team of 34 chefs, including the bakers that were making all the bread fresh from scratch, all the viennoiserie fresh from scratch, including we had a room just dedicated for fruits. So like all of your fruit platters, all of your buffet fruits, all of your fruit juices, all of your fruit baskets, everything, just one room. And then we had a chocolate room that was just producing chocolate almost like all day. And okay, let me tell you the breakdown. You have those 3 rooms. Then there's the fine dining kitchen where they're making all of the desserts for the fine dining restaurant. So we make all of the mise en place, and then it's almost finished, and we expedite it to the restaurants, and they kind of just like do the finishing and the plating. Then we have the buffet little room, which also do the banquets, and they do the lobby and all of that stuff. So it was literally a 24-hour operation nonstop every single day, just one restaurant after each other. So like setting up breakfast, clearing up breakfast, setting up lunch, clearing up lunch, setting up dinner, clearing up dinner, doing banquets, doing lobby, doing refills, doing bakery, baking fresh bread for every service. Like there was no bread that was going from lunch to dinner. Impossible.
How much waste comes out of that?
We try to monitor it as much as possible, but obviously we can't be in a situation where we run out of things because of who we were or who we are. But we try to monitor things as much as possible. In terms of like fruits, there was very little waste because whatever was left over was either turned into a detox juice or a jam or something. The breads, as much as possible, we would limit it because we sort of would know the numbers plus a little bit extra, and whatever was left over would go into the hotel canteen. So like, the team would eat it. In terms of pastries, I mean, again, like as much as possible. The buffets were probably my worst nightmare because those were the places where I couldn't control wastage as much as I would like to. And I hate buffets anyway. They're just the bane of my existence. I can't stand them.
Wait, it's so funny because I wanted to ask you this. I remember hearing this interview with Anthony Bourdain where he was talking about the smell of hollandaise sauce would just like trigger trauma because of the number of brunches that he did. He's like, I can't smell hollandaise sauce anymore. So I wanted to ask you, like, what are the things that trigger your nightmares from that period? What dishes are you like, I will never make this again, ever?
Oh my God, what dishes? I like, there are definitely some dishes that I never want to make again or never want to see again. There was one from the first restaurant that I worked with, not at Burj Al Arab. It was a French Mediterranean restaurant, and we used to make these tarte tatins that like you needed 6 apples to go in one tatin, and it was a busy restaurant. We were doing like 250, 270 like covers a night, and this dessert was a pre-order, so you'd have to order it like at the beginning of your meal. It took about 40 minutes to like cook it. It took 6 apples to peel, to core, to cut, to core again, to shape perfectly, to caramelize in like boiling hot, like butter, sugar mixture to get it to the right caramelization, put the puff pastry on there, 40 minutes in the oven. I think that's one dish that like I have a love-hate relationship with because like by 3 to 6 months, I could make it with my eyes closed, and I still can do it now. But that trauma of peeling and coring and shaping like 50 kilos of apples every day, was just like, I need other people to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So after a day working in a central kitchen that supplies food to a 7-star hotel, that contains 9 restaurants, you go home. What do you actually want to eat?
Normally, when I go home, I don't really want to eat anything. I just want quiet. I want no one to speak to me. I just like need quiet for at least an hour just to wind down from about like 14, 16 hours of this nonstop. We need this, we need, because it's constantly like it's taking, right? It's like, we need this, we need this, we need this, we need this, we need. So it's like, I just need an hour where nobody needs anything.
Yeah. So that boss of yours was right. He's like, you are going to be lonely. You're going to be alone.
100%.
You will not want to talk to anyone. You will not have the capacity.
Yeah, like it didn't matter. Like even if I had friends, I didn't want to talk to them.
Yeah. So what is the job? You know, there's this comedian named Dion Cole, and he released this stand-up special that was one of my favorite specials called I think it's called Bombing, or yeah, and he basically released it during COVID.
Okay.
And it was a compilation of all the recordings of him practicing the thing that would become his special.
Okay.
But because of COVID, he wasn't able to record the special.
Okay.
And so all he was left with was all these recordings from different clubs of him working on his act.
Right.
And in it, it's amazing. It's on Netflix. If you look up Dion Cole, I have the wrong name, but if you look it up, you'll find it. But in the beginning of the thing, it's him working through the jokes, and he says on stage, he's like, "You guys think that The Job is the Netflix show, the final special. You think that that's the job, but that's not the job. This is the job."
Right.
The job of actually like kind of bombing and working through the jokes not working and working them out and taking notes and refining and revising and doing social media, and that's the actual job.
Right.
Right. So I think the job of a pastry chef is making amazing pumpkin spiced, beautiful, beautiful pistachio laden cakes that have dripping, oozing, amazing glaze and this incredible thing and beautiful snow, like
what you don't know is
petals.
That I've bombed it a million times.
Yeah, so I want to know, what is the actual job?
The actual job
behind becoming an award-winning pastry chef. Like, what thankless social media stuff do you have to do? Like, what are the annoying parts? What are the hellish parts of your job that constitutes the actual job to be successful doing what you have to do?
The hellish part of my job is sounds like a first world problem, but the amount of eating that you have to do for research.
I was going to say that. I swear to God.
It's just, at some point, like, I'm just like, I can't eat anymore. I just can't. Like, I don't want to. I just want a piece of fruit.
Yeah.
But
it's like they say, like,
it takes,
you
like,
can't trust a skinny chef.
You can't. And like, I don't know if I can.
Yeah, I mean, it's okay. So that's an interesting thing.
It is, honestly. It's kind of a double-edged sword. Like, it's loving trying new things and like discovering all these new ingredients, and like you travel and they do these techniques that are amazing, and you just want to absorb it all. But again, like at some point you're just like I can't anymore. So yeah, think that
Do you feel like you have to play this like social media game? You know, the obligatory like reels. This tastes so good. Like, do you
I
do you feel like you have to do that?
hate it. And I refuse to do it. I should be better with social media. I'm just so like,
Guys, so good, so
so
good. You have to try.
amazing. I don't believe in like bad reviews because I feel like somebody put an effort in there and like it's just my palate that like is not matching with yours. I don't believe in bad reviews. But I like social media for me is such a it's very mood based. I'm like, yeah, today I'm in the mood. Let's do it. And then like I'll go quiet for like a week and I'll be like, oh, I'm fine with that. Like there's no obligation.
Yeah. It's a hustle though.
It is.
It's I don't know.
It is honestly good for
It
people.
must be tricky, especially for like a medium like food. Like it's amazing to me how pervasive social media content about food
Yeah.
is because you can't taste it. Like obviously you can't taste it, right?
Yeah.
Unlike like visual arts or music or stuff like that. So it's like it's tricky.
Yeah.
It's tough. Okay, so last question before I let you go is I want you to put together a list of your favorite pastries. Like if you were to put together a menu that and which you've done before,
Okay.
and they can be dishes that you've created. They can be dishes that other people have created,
Yeah.
or they can be classics. What would be your perfect pastry menu?
Okay. Um my all-time favorite pastry is a cannelé. So it's like a little baked custard that has this like honey. You melt um, beeswax and you brush the mold and like you put this custardy like mixture in there and you bake it and it gets this like really burnt caramel honey exterior that's like crunchy and then it's like custardy in the middle. It looks super simple. It's really hard to get right. So that would definitely be on my menu. There's a dish that I did, or a pastry that I did last year. It's a khanfurush cake,
Mm.
and it's a cake that's been passed on from my grandmother to my mom to me, and so it's evolved, and I love the evolution of it. My grandma used to make it, she used to make the batter and like put it in a pot and like close the lid and like that would somehow bake it, or she'd fry it. And then my mom,
What are the ingredients?
it's actually it's rice flour based. So it does have like wheat flour, but it's mostly rice flour. It has rose water, saffron, and cardamom, and it's super light, but not gummy. It's kind of crumbly, but still very moist somehow. And it's an oil based cake because obviously like butter wasn't a thing here back in the day. Um, so yeah, and then my mom just made it as a cake when we were growing up, and like that's something that I took and like I made it my own way. So I love the evolution of that, and that I would definitely see on the menu. What else? There's a Ali 2.0. I think that kind of like changed the way that I like looked at things a lot. And I did that for the hotel, and I didn't realize how special it was until I saw other people eating it. So like I kind of
Yeah, so
created
tell us
it.
about. I saw this on your Instagram. Tell us about what there actually is in it.
Yeah. So it has a caramelized cream mousse that like has some rose flavor in it. Has a lot of salted pistachios. It has a toffee that's it's supposed to mimic raisins, which I know not everybody loves, but like we had to have the raisins in there. And it's based on this Egyptian dish, Ali, that's like a bread pudding, right? So it's based on bread waste that's like soaked in milk and it's baked and it gets this caramelized top. Um, Really delicious. And so kind of that was probably the dish that formed my entire philosophy. So taking a dish that was from my childhood that I absolutely despised having at every wedding that I was dragged to by my mom. And like the one thing that I would look forward to was the dessert. And the amali was always bad. It was just always terrible. And so taking that apart and like taking apart the flavors and the textures and the feeling and the essence and kind of putting it back in a way that I can or I can have a better ending for that memory, I would say, kind of shaped my whole philosophy about how I look at pastries and how I construct them.
Okay,
Yeah,
cool. Is that the last one on the menu?
I think that might be the last one on the menu. I think so. The churros are amazing. Actually, the churros. The churros, because I've done them sweet and savory, and they're pretty good. They're special.
Nice.
Yeah.
Do you have, I mean, do you have favorite restaurants to go to across the Gulf? I mean, you mentioned a bunch of different places across the Gulf. Do you feel like there are other restaurants that you're like, oh my God, like if you are in Kuwait or if you're in Oman or if you're in Saudi or if you're in whatever, these are places to go to. Do you do this type of gastro tourism? Also, not necessarily in the Gulf, other parts of the Arab world.
Yes, I do. I pick the restaurants that I kind of want to go to every time I travel, and like I try to hit
Okay, so
them.
let's hear them.
Uh,
Share your
the
secrets.
one in the Gulf that I would say I can't say that I've traveled to any other Gulf country recently, but the one that I have been to in the last couple of months was Bahrain, and I went to Fusions by Tala, and she's
Yeah, Tala's restaurant.
right, and she's doing beautiful, delicious food, and like I highly recommend, like if you really want to have a a culinary experience, of Bahraini cuisine, go to Tala's. It's delicious.
You
Um,
should also listen to the episode with Tala Bashmi on
is she
Matbakh.
on
That was a
there?
good, yeah, that was
Yeah,
great.
she's we're like homies. I think we're homies.
Yeah,
Yeah, we are. Um,
very cool.
yeah, lots of restaurants. It's hard to pinpoint, honestly. Hard to pinpoint. It depends on the destination, where you're going.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, people can find you online. Very easy on Instagram. It's Sahar YP,
Yeah.
SAHARYP. Um, and thanks so much. This is so much fun.
Thanks, Mikey. It was a lot of fun.